Hi, I'm going to show you how to understitch a seam. So I've pinned my seam, and this is a curved seam, so this is my what would be a pocket lining, and the calico section would represent the garment. So the first thing you do is sew your seam as you would do normally. So an understitch seam is where you really don't want to top stitch a seam. It could be round a neck or round an armhole, or neck and armhole facings. You can understitch these as well. So if you really don't want it top stitched, then you would understitch it, which makes the facing sit back nicely, keeps the pocket bag lining back and hidden. So once you've sewn your seam, okay, I'm going to clip my seam first because it's a curve and you always clip a curve. So give it some clips. And then I'm going to trim the seam down before turning it, but don't trim the seam down too much because you need to understitch to the seam. So if I've got a 1.5 seam allowance here, which I have, I'm going to trim it down to 0.75. So if you're working on a 1 centimetre seam allowance, you could trim it down slightly, especially if it's a little bit thinner and visible on the other side. You want to get it down to possibly 0.5 centimetre or 0.75 of a centimetre. So that's trimmed and clipped because it's going around a curve. Okay, so here what I'm going to now do is I am going to sew the whole of the seam allowances to the pocket bag. Okay, so there's the only layer that's not being stitched is the outside layer. So about 3 millimeters in from the edge, I'm going to just start doing a little top stitch really, but on the inside. So I'm just going to stitch 3 mils in, and as I do this I'm just going to pull the pocket lining gently to one side so that it pulls on the seam slightly. And again, this is great for around a neck and an armhole because it makes the lining or the facing or the pocket bag lining sit back and tuck inside so it isn't visible, and that's what we don't want it to be visible from the outside. So there's no stitching and no facings or linings shown from the outside. So I'm just going to back stitch. So the stitch is 3 millimeters in, so it's quite close to the edge, and it's a nice small stitch size. Just trim my threads. So there, it's done. Over to the ironing board. And working from the inside, I'm just gently going to press it along. And what you'll find is that the understitching will make the pocket bag or the facing curve back inside the garment. So as you can see, there's a tiny little stitch line, but it's just on the inside. And on the outside, there's no sign of any stitching at all. So just give it a gentle press.